proposed solutions that ultimately the voting members would vote on. So I think that the underlying goal would be to include them as much as possible, but certainly where there may need to be limitations, I think we would have to be willing to consider that.
Follow up?
Please.
So, and my second question is, can you explain to me, so it's my understanding that this amendment was supposed to represent the opposition, that somehow we were taking power away from constituencies, that we were then, that it was actually remedying the issue of power being taken from constituencies. But when I look at the powers that you're giving them and their rights and responsibilities, I guess I'm trying to understand or reconcile what voters then have the power to decide on, and how we're then statutorily giving equal power to who was not voted on, but now saying that a city and a county can appoint those people. How do we make sure that who the city and the county appoints is effective? You have no criteria in this bill. What we've been trying to avoid is the politics and the dysfunction. So how is it that a county and a city with no criteria whatsoever can provide an effective member without the constituencies that they serve selecting that member?
Thank you for the question. And we did talk about this quite a bit, about criteria. And one of the reasons that we didn't put specific criteria was because we thought that each municipality should have that option of what they think is important to them. So if they think that we're missing someone with extreme financial, a financial background, and the argument is, well, CCSD has their CFO. Well, we also know where that CFO gets their check signed. So we were hoping to, by not having it that specific, that it would be a little more nimble, was the idea. As far as what we've talked about, obviously, some people have said you're never going to find anyone who's going to do this job for, I don't know how much they get paid. They think they get paid less than we do, I think, which is not very much. But I've actually been contacted by several people who are very interested in, Senator Neal, and I know you know this to be true, that everyone feels like they're a subject matter expert when it comes to education because we've all been to school. But so when you actually meet with someone who is really a subject matter expert, they are chomping at the bit to share their expertise. And I found that in my role as chair of education, there are so many people in the state of Nevada who really, really do have a deep care and love for the kids of Nevada and are happy to share that information. So we specifically kept it more vague, but we also expect that, like with anything, that is going to be a very public meeting, and that these people will be extremely vetted, not only through the municipalities themselves, but also the public. So, it's kind of that fine line. I think a lot of times with legislation, we don't want to get too specific because then we end up like pigeonholing. But giving that flexibility is what we ended up on.
Please follow up.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So I understand what you're saying, and I guess I'll probably have a round two on this one, but I'm trying to process that. Here's what's in the back of my mind, right? We just came from the summer where there was a particular city or a couple of cities that had joined together to break up the school district. Now you're giving those cities power in this bill to select a representative. That is the first pause for concern for me. The second pause for concern is the power that they will then yield without the constituencies being a part of it. And there's no conversation about the racial demographics. So when we talk about North Las Vegas, which is a majority minority city, and we talk about the fact that there is currently no African American on the board, period. And that when we think about other representation that might be or should be a part of the board, it's the racial question for me, but also the teachers who I feel teach at-risk schools, who probably have more of a say in what should happen at the district level and can provide probably expertise that I don't feel is really, really on the board, which is how do you really teach and move the policy that is going to change the narrative for children, right? So if you have 5 to 10 years of teaching experience and you're in an at-risk school, I think there is value in that human being being placed on that board, right? Because not only are they walking in the door with information and knowledge to try to drive the policy in a different way that the board is not discussing, but they are going to be able to hone in and dial down and say, you know what, this is actually the wrong direction. And so I'm struggling with this section for multiple reasons. Because I don't think it's fair. I don't think it allows for an appropriate assessment of what a constituency might want. You're assuming that somehow the city is connected to their own people. That's what you're assuming. That they have conversations and that they know what their people want. And that's not true.
So I just want to give everybody a lay of the land here in terms of questions. I have in the queue myself, followed by Senator Buck, followed by Senator Doñate. Senator Hammond, did we have you on there as well? Nope. And Senator Doñate, we're off? Okay. All right. So thank you both for the presentation. I do appreciate the bipartisan work and making it abundantly clear that it's not one side. I think there's a common theme presently in the legislature that's not unique to this session, but it's more obvious with the legislation that's been brought forth. There's folk that are concerned. They're concerned about the board makeup. They're concerned about the level of expertise that's being brought forth to that board. There's concerns about whether or not they're even capable of being around kids, because we've had unique challenges where some folk can't even be around kids, and that's their role and sole existence. So I get all that. And I preface it by saying that I start through that kind of lens of sympathy, and I believe that a lot of folk in this building kind of feel some kind of way that we have to try something different. What I'm trying to get at is how this relationship works and where the focus is. Is the focus to help the board, or is the focus to challenge it? And let me explain what I mean by that. Presently, the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I may be wrong on this. I am not speaking from a lens of expertise in this comment. My understanding is the board could, if they wanted to now, set up subcommittees and citizen advisory committees, et cetera, et cetera. So through my lens looking out is, if I'm sitting here and I believe that we need some support in that, we can get some folk from business and industry, we get some folk from here and there, and allow them to make up some type of advisory role to us. And that I see that relationship kind of working in unison. We believe that we don't have the expertise and we want you to help. So the first question is, can they do that now? And the second question is, do we damage that relationship when we go about it in this manner, where rather than the board saying, let's set up an advisory committee, somebody that's going to be a support team to us, that we are now forcing those 4 individuals upon them? Will that create a situation? And the answer might be yes, and that dynamic might be a good thing. I am not suggesting it's wrong. I just want to kind of hear your thought process on that.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Toby York for the record. First, I want to just acknowledge what you acknowledge, and that is this is not a partisan issue. Throughout my campaign, I saw people left, right, RD, red, blue. Everybody was like, "There's challenges with education." So I was honored to be able to work with my co-presenter here today and co-sponsor of this bill, because it should not be a partisan issue. We all want the same thing right? We all want to improve education for our students in Nevada. With respect to your question, it is my understanding, because I'm not an expert either, but it is my understanding that the current boards are able to set up subcommittees and bring in individuals to participate and contribute to discussions. I guess my pushback on that is some form of this bill has been proposed since 2013. Each session, we continue to kick the can down the road, and nothing has changed. We have not seen, at least that I am aware of, where these boards have recognized some internal deficiencies, have called in experts to facilitate a higher level discussion. So I think the fact that that has not happened shows maybe there's a reluctance or whatever it is for a desire, and I think it's probably human nature to maintain status quo. Change is tough, right? And we recognize that this change is tough, and it's an emotional issue, as I'm sure you're going to hear shortly. It's an emotional issue for people, but I applied, again, great motives to everybody. Everybody wants to do what's right. So I think. And then there's also a difference, right? I think there is a difference, for example, you invite a guest over to your house for a weekend. You can tolerate, you can deal with whatever for a short period of time. That person moves in with you and they have a permanent seat at your kitchen table. It's different. The dialogue, the discussion is different. And so that is where we think that not only has it not been happening that we're aware of, and the level of dysfunction continues, but we think that by adding these seats to the table, where now they become a part of the broader dialogue and discussion, that we are hopeful that there will be, certainly through a period of change and reluctance, everybody get used to it, if we can do this, that at some point people will recognize and appreciate the higher level voices, the more voices contributing strategically towards specific areas. So we're hopeful that in the long run that it would be accepted and that we would get better dialogue.
And then if I could just follow up before I hand it over to Senator Buck. How do you foresee, I understand that they're not voting members, but during a controversial vote, how do you see this playing out? And this is a twofold question. The other part of it is, where else in the country have we seen this model? Do we think it's been successful? Have we gotten some productive feedback on that? So that's the first question. And the second is, in a controversial vote, so I can just kind of see it play out, do you see these members voicing an opinion, we think this is horrible, we think this is great, followed by silence, and then the voting members would then do what they do? Do you see them participating in that process right before a vote, voicing their opinion, right up until the moment that their hands are tied?
Shannon Bilbray, expert for the record. Well, absolutely, because we have open meeting law, so all the discussion would have to take place, right at that time. As for your other question, and where have we seen this? We had extensive presentations and roundtables, and so we actually had, I believe it was the NCSL came and talked about the fully appointed, fully elected, and hybrids. Granted, it was over a year ago, so I'm not remembering exactly where it was, but that is what you see across the nation, those three. And to my colleague's point, I think we're just all a little bit frustrated, and we are sick of being, 50th in the nation and knowing that we're trying everything and we can't just keep doing what we're doing. So I think, part of this bill, part of the reason that we discussed it so much in the interim is because we really did want to come up with some sort of a solution. So like we said before, is this perfect? Probably not. And I think very few bills that come through this building are people would call perfect, but at least we're moving the needle. And I know you all have the same questions at the door as I do, or frustrations with our schools, and it's so frustrating to, as you chaired education as well, to, be the chair of education and just sort of feel like you're just beating your head against the wall because nothing is changing. So, yes, I do, to go back to the beginning of your question, I do believe that they will be speaking and trying to steer the conversation and steer the votes. And I don't think there's a problem with that. I think just like Senator Neal brought up the aspect of the closer that I hadn't really thought of with the collective bargaining issue. You know, those are good things to have someone bring up. So do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Senator Toby York for the record. I think we have actually a very good local example of where this happened with the State Board of Education. I believe it was SB 197 in 2011, I believe came through this body, passed out of the Senate 21-0, and it passed through the Assembly 41-1, where we added non-voting appointed members to our State Board of Education. And I wasn't necessarily as engaged as I am now, but as I understand that certainly through a period of transition, that board appears to have stabled significantly, and they are getting some higher level discussions on issues. So I think that even is a local example of where this worked.
And thank you for that. And this is more of a comment. And it was meant as a freebie, quite frankly, to remind folk that these folk are going to be participating in that process all the way up to that vote. Because I was concerned initially in just dissecting it, you know, what's the point of just having folk amongst a group where if they're not listening to them now, which is some of what I've heard from proponents of this bill, saying we're not listening to people, but putting non-voting members there, you know, what's to say they're going to listen to them there if that's your position? But I think there is some value in somebody challenging you all the way up until a final vote, and there may be a benefit there. And with that, we'll move over to Senator Buck.
Thank you, Vice Chair Flores, and thank you for presenting the bill. I have worked, you know, for several boards who have been appointed and have also been on boards that have been appointed. You'd mentioned the State Board of Education. There's the State Public Charter School Association Board. But I feel like this boils down to just human behavior and just kind of this desperation to always trying to fix what is happening in our majority populated area or district in CCSD. And it's trying to fix this kind of episode of Desperate Housewives that goes on. And like Senator Neal said from District 4, people have transitioned off in the past few years or past election. I know that a couple that were maybe the ones that were causing that. So I kind of hate to take away the public's voice, but you kind of have that a little bit more of the public's voice with like North Las Vegas, City of Henderson, City of Las Vegas, and then the county commissioners being able to appoint. So to get to my question, like how do these jurisdictions choose? Explain the process. Is there an expertise that's required? Finance, legal, human resources, teacher, principal, educator, technology, or management and supervisor? Or because I know in charter schools, there has to be an application process. You have to fill like a job. I mean, it's for free, but you have to fill a job. Is there a certain expertise that's needed?
Shannon Bilber Axelrod for the record. So municipalities and counties appoint all sorts of people to all sorts of boards. I had the pleasure of serving on the Clark County Las Vegas Library District Board, and I absolutely turned in a CV. I filled out an application. I said, you know, write what you thought you would, what I thought I would bring to the board, et cetera, et cetera. So kind of going back to why we didn't set up exact parameters is because I do believe hopefully right now, right now I think one of the reasons that you're seeing or hearing so much about the possibility of the breakup of the school district is because there's a lot of dysfunction on the school board. So I think having these 4 positions might help that, right? So I think right now, I think it were up to me, you'd want some cooler heads. I mean, we have some cool heads currently, but I think that would help. Decorum, things like, going through financial, I think it would be very important. Technology, I think all of the above. And I think that the municipalities and the would take this very seriously, very seriously. We're talking about, one member representing them. So, I think it would be, very competitive. And people would have to, make their case on why they would be chosen.
Yes, Senator Buck, thank you for the question. Toby York for the record. As my colleague suggested, it's going to be up to each entity to come up with their process for making their appointments. But I also want to touch on something else you said, at least I thought, and you touched on something that's important that I apologize, I should have kind of even commented on earlier, and that is this concern about diluting the voice of democracy and how these appointees will be appointed by elected officials. And I will tell you, I can imagine, for example, in my city of Henderson, that if we continue to have the challenges in education and the city electeds are appointing an individual that is not contributing, that's not going to bode well for them in their next election. So I think that there's a real element of continued democracy even at that level through those appointments.
And next, we'll go to Senator Hammond, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Good afternoon, folks. I just wanted to, I think you know where I'm going to go with this because I haven't heard it yet, and so I thought I'd better mention it here. One of the concerns I had, and again, I'm right there with you guys because I've been here for many, many years watching what's unfolding in front of us. Making changes in education is paramount. Making improvements in education, not just changes, but improvements. So I applaud you for what you're trying to do. It is a heavy lift. So thank you for the work you're doing. The one thing I'd bring your attention to and just make sure you can put it on the record and start working on it is I believe in the way the bill is written, you said that a quorum could be made of 6 people when you have 11, so a quorum is 6. But of those 6, the 4 non-voting members could actually be part of that quorum. I think that we might have a problem with that because now you can have a scenario where you have 6 people, 4 of them are non-voting, 2 of them are voting, and now you're passing out a requirement or a regulation, or you're passing out a policy with only 2 votes. Have you thought about that? Can you address that?
I don't believe that is the intent. The quorum there, Shannon Bilbray-Axelrod for the record, the intent of that, the quorum is that the meeting could happen, but no votes would take place. So no votes, the 2 voting members, that would not constitute, you couldn't have, a policy couldn't pass based on 2 votes.
So for you, you'd have to have at least 4 voting members at that meeting in order
Correct.
to be able to pass something out?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, Toby York for the record. Senator, I appreciated when you brought that up to me initially. And if there is some tightening of language that we need to insert here to ensure that intent is carried out, I think it's absolutely, it would be a friendly amendment for us.
Perfect. Members, any additional questions? Senator, nope, off the record. We have additional questions for you off the record. I want to remind folk that, and if I could please have both of you sit back. We're going to invite those wishing to testify in support, opposition, and neutral. I'm going to remind folk that we're going to limit testimony to 2 minutes. If I cut you off, please don't take that as a sign of disrespect. Just want to do it for all, for purposes of transparency. And if for whatever reason your testimony gets cut off, you can always submit it in writing to our committee staff and we'll upload it. Sure. And at times there may be folk asking you some questions. So for now, we'll open it up in support for Assembly Bill 175. Whoever wishes to go first.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Marie Nisis. I'm the president of the Clark County Education Association. I'm speaking today in support of AB 175 and would like to thank Assemblyman Urick and Assemblywoman Bilbray-Axelrod for bringing this important bill forward. This morning, CCSD sent the clearest message they possibly could to this legislature about the need for this bill. I am appalled to share that ahead of this hearing, CCSD sent an email to CCSD staff urging them to oppose this bill, saying that it would be an assault on democracy. It is unacceptable for CCSD as the employer to be using district resources to promote lobbying to employees while they are at work. It is also yet another example of the district running from accountability. Why wouldn't they welcome our municipalities in Clark County to have input on the education of our students and get some skin in the game? Why wouldn't they invite more subject matter experts to their board who have a real understanding of financial management, education, or human resources? The answer, more input on the board means more accountability for the school district. This body has spent the entire session trying to gain some control and accountability from the largest district in the state. AB 175 is your opportunity to do just that. The trustees' #1 focus should be making sound, student, and staff-focused decisions. The board's longstanding dysfunction has negatively impacted both CCSD students and staff. But now there is an opportunity to make the governing body of the district more robust and student-focused, like it should be. We urge your support. Thank you.
And before we leave, we do have a question for you. Please, Senator Neal.
Thank you. So I understand what you're saying and about the lobbying piece and then the dysfunctionalism, but can you give me any evidence under the current reorg law where now cities and counties can get presentations and do anything, at least have some kind of conversation around the reorganization policy that we passed in 2015, where they have actually successfully engaged? I mean, I've seen the Clark County presentation. It's just a presentation. That's it at the commission. So how exactly are we going to get more efficiency, less politicizing of the board, and there's no criteria to focus on students, to focus on staff? There's nothing in the bill that says that who they appoint will even meet that criteria.
Marie Nices for the record. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague.
Senator Neal, members of the committee, Nicole Rourke representing the city of Henderson. To answer your question, we work with the district on those presentations, and frankly, we've had real difficulty getting the kind of data and accountability that we've requested in those presentations. We've gone to the district on numerous occasions. We've asked for different data points, and we've gotten a lot of pushback and basically been told you'll get the information we're willing to give you.
Follow, please.
Thank you. So have you seen the opposition letter where they mention Prince George County, where they have an appointed mix and they have conflict, drama, ethics issues, power struggles? So city gets on the board. You guys now have a position, or a city appointed person now gets on the board, and now you have the power to then push. How will this be more effective or efficient? Won't it just be more political drama and theater?
Nicole Rourke again for the record. Senator, our plan is to find someone highly qualified for that position, to add some expertise to that board and to help decrease that drama. I mean, our goal is, and our council is generally in agreement on most of the things that pass through our council. And so we're really looking forward to, having a voice on there that adds expertise and does not add to that. I think our state board is a really good example of how this can work and work really well. The transition was fairly smooth. You now have 4 elected officials, you have 3 appointed officials who are voting members, and you have 4 non-voting appointed members on that state board, and you've seen really good work come out of that state board since. I mean, I know you'll recall, you've been in this body a long time, some of the dysfunction of the state board that went on prior to 2011, and you haven't seen that over the last 12 years. You've really seen improvements in that area, and we think it can work at local school board level as well.
Thank you for that. Whoever wishes to go next in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dylan Keith, DYLAN-KEITH, Assistant Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber, the largest and broadest-based business organization in the state of Nevada. It was also my pleasure to oversee the Southern Nevada Forum, made up of over 350 active stakeholders and co-chaired by a bipartisan delegation of 17 legislators. This bill, AB 175, came from the Education Committee, co-chaired by 4 of those Southern Nevada legislators, bringing bipartisan representation from each legislative partisan caucus. The Education Committee represents over 175 individuals from a diverse representation of professional and regional backgrounds. The Chamber would like to thank Assemblyman Yurick and Assembly Education Chair Bill Bray Axelrod for bringing this legislation forward and their continued work on the legislation that would shake up a system that has let Nevada students down for too long. The current structure of governance has a repeated history of not being effective to improve student achievement, bringing an erosion of trust in the Clark County School District. For the better part of 2 decades, Nevada's K-12 education system has ranked at or near the bottom of states nationally. Nevada is not competing nationally, and our students deserve better. It does not make sense to continue on the same path and hope for better results. The Chamber is in support of Clark County Commission and the cities of Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and Henderson City Councils to each appoint one professional to the Clark County School District Board of Trustees. These cities represent the diverse communities that deserve to have a voice. This bill does not affect any other school district but our own. This Southern Nevada Forum priority is a step forward in creating a change to better focus education policy on student achievement in Southern Nevada. It is our belief that these reforms need to happen now for the sake of over 300,000 students currently enrolled in the Clark County School District. These students are the future entrepreneurs and leaders that will work to make Nevada better in the near future. The business community has a vested interest contributing large sums as taxpayers towards education. These appointed school board members from our local jurisdictions will bring expertise in financial management, land use, construction, building maintenance, food services, purchasing, leadership, development, partnerships, collaboration, and communication. That is why we believe that this bill is vital to our community and to move our education system forward for the sake of our students, not just today, but for future generations. Thank you, Chair and members, for your time.
And thank you for that. Please, next speaker in support.
Thank you, Vice Chair Flores. Members of the committee, Nicole Rourke again representing the city of Henderson. We are here in support of AB 175. Appointing school members can provide greater accountability to parents in the community. The City Council receives numerous constituent concerns regarding our education system with no direct means to address them. By appointing a school board member, municipalities can ensure that leaders of the school district have the experience necessary to guide such a large organization and be responsive to parents and families. There are many school boards across the country that have authorized some or all members to be appointed. According to Education Commission of the states, these states include Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Virginia. Several large school districts have appointed or mixed boards, including Boston Public Schools, New York City, whose 13 board members entirely appointed, with 8 members selected by the mayor and the remaining 5 seats filled by each borough's president. New Jersey also long provided for mayoral appointment of school board members. Additionally, 5 out of 10 school districts with the largest per pupil spending have appointed school board members, according to a 2020 research paper on the topic by UNLV student Yanela Yamas. Our schools and our community need strong leadership at the school board level. At no time has this been more evident than now. These last few years have presented unprecedented challenges for every organization, and working with our regional partners has been essential to providing the leadership and support needed by our community. We have seen the amazing work that can be accomplished in our community through true collaboration, hard work, and mutual respect. Schools are the cornerstones of our communities, and our kids deserve nothing less than professional leaders prepared to take on our greatest challenges. We look forward to the opportunity to appoint a member to the CCSD Board of School Trustees who will raise the level of accountability, professionalism, and collaboration, as well as bring the expertise required to make crucial decisions for an organization with a $2.4 billion operating budget and over $4 billion in capital funding. With that, I thank you for allowing me to take your time to support AB 175 today.
And thank you for that. Is there anybody else wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 175? All right, we got one more in Carson City, and then we'll move to Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair and members of this committee. I very rarely come before you in this format, so I appreciate the time. Liz McMenamin, Retail Association in Nevada, representing many mom-and-pop stores and businesses that are looking forward to an educated workforce. CCSD represents a considerable line item investment, as you all know, in our state's budget year after year. But the return on investments just doesn't measure up to the investment that the state has put in. Most importantly, the children are the ones that are seeing these poor and different results. AB 175 will inject additional viewpoints and perspectives into the nation's 5th largest district and this could only have positive effects on the Nevada youth of today. By allowing voters the additional oversight of their local representatives, appointing a school trustee, the public's voice is only strengthened as new expertise is added, along with an additional layer of accountability. And we hope that you look at this, and we hope that we can do better as a state to educate our workforce going forward. We appreciate the time, and we ask your support on AB 175. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us. Seeing no one else in Carson, we'll go to Las Vegas. Support for Assembly Bill 175.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Maureen Schaefer, and I'm the Executive Director for Council for a Better Nevada. We are pleased to support AB 175 through the appointment and addition of non-voting members by local governing bodies to the elected Clark County Board of Trustees. Following the 2021 legislative session, we are pleased to be part of a larger community working group that deliberated many ideas over a year and a half with education policy experts to provide recommendations to the Interim Committee on Education to impact improved governance of our K-12 school boards. We are pleased to submit that body of thoughtful work to the interim committee for discussion over that period of time. The idea of adding appointed members selected from our local jurisdictions where they have been expressing a want for more engagement and accountability in the public education process was noteworthy and not an uncommon process in the hybrid appointed model and local selection process. We understand this model expands the board rather than replacing elected positions with appointed positions. While our board's historical approach to governance and governing bodies has been that smaller boards govern with more effectiveness, we believe that this step in adding additional accountable minds to the public education governance model outweighs the school board size issue at this time if it encourages more consistency, inclusivity, accountability, and stability to providing more decorum in meetings and decision-making in the best interests of students, families, and to Nevada's economy. Most often, the old answers no longer fit the new questions when it comes to adapting to inevitable change that's happening in schools today. That is certainly the case for ever-changing things that go on in education today. And change is hard, even when we know we need it. We appreciate the interim committees and legislators' acceptance of the working group's report, and more so the measured innovation and compromises in AB 175. Please consider passage of this bill.
And thank you for joining us. Next speaker in support.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and Vice Chair. My name is Daniel Stewart. I'm here on behalf of the Clark County Education Association to offer our strong support for this. I'd like in general just to say ditto to almost everything that was said by the other supporters and save you from having to hear it again. But a couple of things I want to emphasize. Not only was this bill bipartisan, I think the intent or the angst behind this bill is bipartisan as well. I doubt you could talk to anyone in that building or down here or in the community that would say that the status quo, at least in Clark County, the status quo for education is sustainable or working. Maybe working better in some counties, and you could say that in Clark County, our largest county, we need radical fixes to this status quo. This is an attempt to get to those problems. Now, we may disagree on what's causing the problems, how much funding, how that funding is spent, what policies and procedures are allowed within the classroom, time and instruction. There's a lot of things we can disagree, but I don't think anyone would disagree that the system here is broken. One thing I do want to emphasize is that the power of appointment to actually diversify. It is a shame that there is no African-American member currently serving on the Clark County Board of Trustees. A sadder fact maybe is that in the entire state's history, there's only been 2 persons of color ever to serve on the Nevada Supreme Court. Both of those were initially appointed, Justice Douglas and recently with the Justice Lee. Appointment often breaks down barriers in ways that elections do not. And I think that the cities would very much look to appoint members that represent their community. Again, I ask for strong support for this bill and for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Next speaker in support.
Yeah, My name is Al Rojas, and I live in Assembly District 12, Senate District 21. I'm actually here to address an issue that I believe is important in the state in education, and that's the fact that kids are not receiving enough counseling, both in charter schools and non-charter schools. I've been informed on this by doing some research and confirming it with educators, people that are in the front lines in the classrooms teaching their students. We can't continue to have teachers be the parent, be the counselor, and be the psychologist. If this is going to bring an input into the trustees, that we're going to be getting the appropriate counseling for these kids to keep them in school and keep them out of jails. If you guys know that if a kid stays in school past the 9th grade, his odds of being a criminal go down to less than 5%. And that's the problem. Crime is too high in schools. These kids need counseling. I'm hearing that 40 to 50% of these kids, that probably could be a problem. They don't like their teacher, they're sick, they have problems at home. This has to be addressed. And if this is an avenue for it, I support that. If it's not, then I guess I don't. But I think it is an avenue. It appears to be one. That's actually one of the reasons I'm going to be commenting in the general comments, if you guys will allow it. But I do support this bill if it's going to bring counseling for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Next speaker in Las Vegas in support of Assembly Bill 175. Seeing none, BPS will go to the phone. Anybody wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 175?
To testify in support of AB 175, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. For the record, my name is Jim Frazee. I'm a classroom educator in Clark County, and I have the honor of being Vice President of CCEA. Having witnessed our school board up close and personal over the last 10 years, I have come to a few realizations that I'd like to share with you. I believe every school board trustee that I met started with the best intentions. They believe in kids and public education and want to contribute. Then they run into the governance model that we currently have, and they get lost in the dysfunction. When an elected trustee who might have no experience in running a billion-dollar organization with 40,000 employees and over 300,000 kids can only get facts and perspective from people who have a self-interest in steering their votes, our system is broken. This is what we have in Clark County. An inept superintendent and his staff spoon-feeding trustees his version of reality. The consequences have been disastrous for our students, staff, and our beloved state. Trustees have to hear from independent experts to make informed decisions, instead of self-serving bureaucrats whose paycheck depends on them altering reality. There is no model of governance in the private sector that would tolerate our current system. It should not be allowed to take place using tax dollars. You cannot, in good conscience, make the investment in CCSD that you're about to make and not address the current broken and outdated governance model. This is why I urge you to support AB 175, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us. If we could please go to the next speaker in support of Assembly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Dan Price. I'm a CTE teacher at Sunrise Mountain High School and a proud member of the Clark County Education Association. I'm here today to speak in support of AB 175. For the past several years, we have had to tolerate the unprofessional behavior of our school board trustees here in Clark County. We have seen infighting, name-calling, and other outrageous actions. They have had to spend thousands of dollars to hire people to teach them how to behave and get along. This bill puts some accountability back in our school board, adding non-voting members from the community with the expertise to help and guide them is good for students and staff. I urge you to pass AB 175 and put some guidance and accountability back in our schools. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Assembly Bill 175.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Christopher DiPaolo, staff for Clark County Education Association, and testifying on behalf of educator Jessica Jones. I'm a veteran kindergarten teacher at a Title I school on the east side of Las Vegas and a proud executive board member of the Clark County Education Association. I'm writing today in support of Assembly Bill 175 with emphasis on Section 1.5, which adds 4 non-voting experts to the Board of Trustees in school districts of more than 75,000 enrolled students. School boards consist of locally elected officials that are entrusted by the public to govern our public schools. In Clark County, they oversee a budget of over $3 billion. Their decisions directly impact children attending Clark County schools. In recent years, school board trustees in Clark County have spent more time in the weeds with one another than making sure administrative functions and educational outcomes for our students are met. Our current board model in Clark County leaves them beholden to the superintendent and the staff for all information. As such, the superintendent sets the narrative for our trustees. There has also been a seemingly endless 4-3 split, which has made it difficult for the board to function as intended. Allowing for appointment of non-voting experts from our community will help support our elected trustees and decrease their reliance on information from the superintendent they are charged with overseeing. Appointed members will provide expertise in areas that our elected trustees may not be familiar with and help ensure they avoid passing policies which adversely affect student performance. I ask that you support Assembly Bill 175. I believe that adopting a different board model will help our school board focus more on their governing duties and supporting our students with policies that will improve their academic success. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Assembly Bill 175.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Adler, and I'm a veteran Spanish and ELL teacher at Sunrise Mountain High School and an executive board member of the Clark County Education Association. I'm here today to speak in support of Assembly Bill 175. I've been in CCSD long enough to have experienced several boards over my 25 years as an educator in Nevada. These elective officials should run for this position with the intent of overseeing their school district and making decisions that advance the progress of the children in the schools that they represent. I do not know when this changed, but so many of us watch our school board meetings with horror that not only does business not get done, but we observe adults behaving in a manner that we would all be ashamed of in public. I think that our school board would benefit from appointed professionals who have particular skills that would assist them in the operations of the school board and provide needed resources that our current board lacks. I urge you to pass AB 175 and put some needed guidance to our school board. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Assembly Bill 175.
Chair, there are no more callers wishing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. Now we'll go to those wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 175. If you could please come forward in Carson City and Las Vegas. And we'll go ahead. I see that there's just 2 folk in Las Vegas. So we'll start in Las Vegas and then move back down to Carson City.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Irene Bustamante Adams, and I represent District F in Clark County School Board, and I am in a leadership role also as the clerk for my colleagues as well. Due to previously scheduled work commitments that could not be moved, President Garcia Morales and Vice President Brooks send their regrets. Our president has given me the authority to speak on behalf of our team. I want to say thank you first to all of you for the service to our state, and we appreciate the legislators and the many sacrifices you are making to serve. It's been approximately 120 days since my swearing-in ceremony. I come before you not having all the answers to fix the challenges in education, nor do I profess that I'm in the end-all be-all to the solution either. What I can say, and say it with confidence, is that I have witnessed movement in the right direction, especially in the priority areas that you want to see evolution on. I have spoken with legislators and other community leaders to understand the things that need to evolve. Here are the 5 areas. You want the trustees to focus on student outcomes. You want a transparent relationship, especially since we all have, since you may be approving a huge amount of education funds and not be sent just to our website to look for the answers. You want professionalism among the trustees. You want accountability for the performance of our one employee. And you want trustees to rethink community engagement to include more interaction with parents, students, the business community, local municipalities, and especially with legislators, so we can be on the same page with addressing concerns. Now, there's way more challenges, but I will focus on these to start. I do want to say that within the 120 days, these are the 8 ways that we are making improvements. On April 17th, our board president approved for a coach facilitator at CCSD to help the trustees with upcoming goal setting.
And I
the
apologize, but
superintendent
we have hit the
evaluation
2-minute
this
mark.
summer.
However, we do have a question for you, and maybe you could weave in some of
Okay.
your additional remarks into your answer. Senator
Thank
Neal,
you.
please.
So, thank you, Vice Chair. So, Bustamante Adams, I think you were getting ready to say that you were hiring a coach to set goals. I know that happened before you were elected. It actually happened, I think it was almost 6 months before you were elected. They had a coach that came in and talked to them about how to prioritize, what's good governance, et cetera, et cetera. And they ended up telling them exactly what the public was telling them. So in regards to your opposition, why do you think that this bill is not a solution? What real effective change is happening at the board level that we can hang our hats on?
Well, I agree with you. Thank you. For the record, Irene Bustamante Adams. I agree with you, Assemblywoman Neal, that they did hire a coach 6 months before I got there, and there has been added value as a result of that. But in addition, that wasn't enough. And so I know with certainty that the coach that is being sought by the Council of Great Cities Schools, which is like the NCSL for legislators, that they have a track record of helping school systems improve student outcomes, especially with career and college readiness. And another outcome from that suggestion 6 months ago was our relaunch of our community engagement listening sessions that we held in March. We held a series of 6 listening sessions, and we got great student participation, parent participation, community stakeholders. And that speaks to the relationship that you want to have, and I think that the pain point that is coming from this bill. In addition, we're also working with the demand side of the equation, which is what I hear that the bill sponsors are alluding to, that CCSD leadership will be at the table at the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance Talent Pipeline Council. What is that? They are pulling together the leaders of the education institutions together, which includes the K through 12 system, us, specifically CCSD, for our region here in Southern Nevada. And it's to work collaboratively that aligns education, workforce, and economic development, and they'll start this summer. And you have to have K-12 at the table because we are the beginning of the pipeline. So I believe that this bill does not speak to that collaborative effort that's being held or being done already outside of this suggested piece of legislation. I'd also say that our superintendent and our board president have met with the mayors of the local municipalities in our region. Their action is to build better relationships with the needs that they have and their interest in education. So I believe that it is a start, at least on a quarterly basis, to increase the communication, transparency, and student outcomes for Southern Nevada. I do agree that some of the suggestions to make improvements for the school board is the increased training. I do agree with that. I do agree that if you are interested in the school board, just like myself, I don't have an educational background, mine is in business, that you run for the school board. This last cycle, I saw certain entities like the ABC PAC and others supporting people that had a business background. And so if there's to be increased training, maybe that's in finance where they think that there may be a lack, or run for the school board, because normally the school board is, we know that it's the bottom of the list, but it's the most bills that come out are in education. So run for the school board. That's what my recommendation would be.
So quick follow-up, Bustamante Adams, or Trustee Bustamante Adams. I hear what you're saying, but I think what's concerning to me, and I brought it up, which is we're talking about the business side, right? But we're not talking about kids. We're not talking about academic achievement, how the appointment to the board will change academic achievement. When folks did their laundry list, there was no, because we're going to make sure that kids are learning, right? That's not even in the list. It's finance, technology, all of these things. But the issue has been the school district has not prioritized academic achievement for students because of the makeup of the board before you got on, all of the, personal drama and ridiculousness that was going on, hitting each other back on social media. But I want to hear what your solution is outside of the business piece. I know you're coming in with an MBA, right? I know that when you were in this building, your largest focus was on the business side, supply side, the demand side, and trying to understand the workforce relationship. But we have third graders that can't read, right? People are trying to figure out how to make this board that gives everyone problems, just mental problems, watching your hearings, because it's very special. I want your solution. If you were to have this bill, right, some version of it pass that actually focused on children, what would it be?
Thank you. For the record, Irene Bustamante and Adams. Senator Neal, my recommendation would be the coach facilitator from the Council of Great City Schools, and here's why. Because the number one priority is, like you said, has to be the mindset and us grounded in student outcomes, plain and simple. That's it. That is it. And I know that in the past that has not been the focus. And you're right. I mean, if you're calling our baby ugly, I would have to say, yep, you are correct. And I could say with confidence, though, within the last 120 days, our professionalism and our decor would be something that you would be proud of. I don't want to be part of something that is embarrassing. And so I'm committed. I am committed to you. I'm committed to my legislators that are in my area and my, especially in the Assembly and in the Senate, to work on student outcomes. But you need a coach to set up that framework. And the Council of Great City Schools has demonstrated a track record with other school boards to do that. That is what I'm going to put my energy in. I'm not sure if this bill does that. If you want to use this bill, then I would say increase the training, set consequences for your behavior as a school board to be able to be removed. And number three, I would use the bill to create the subcommittee if you want a certain area like finance to be addressed, which I've heard from people that have come and testified. That's how I would use the bill. I know the pain is there. That's why I'm in, so I could see it from the inside. Now, I know that it's been 120 days, and I don't profess that it's going to be done in that manner of those days, but I'm committed. I'm in it. And I think it's student outcomes, and I think it's through that coach of the Council of Great City Schools. That's what I'm placing my money on.
All right, and thank you for that, and I hope you were able to get some of those additional remarks. However, if there's still additional information that you want this committee to consider, if you could please submit those in writing to ensure that the committee has access to them. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We'll continue with the next speaker in support of Assembly Bill 175. Excuse me, in opposition.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Earle, and I am the Vice President of Power to Parent. On behalf of the parents we represent, I'm here to speak in opposition to Assembly Bill 175. Parents are against this bill because it further disenfranchises them from important aspects of their children's education, primarily the ability to keep their elected officials accountable through the election process. Appointed trustees, whether they are voting or non-voting members, are not accountable to parents. This bill adds a layer of bureaucracy to the meetings, as well as policy and financial decisions that affect our children directly. Any trustee who has influence on policies and other critical matters related to education should be accountable to voters. It is not acceptable to CCSD parents that the amendment to this bill provides that the non-voting members of the Board of Trustees have, 1, the same rights and responsibilities as the voting members, 2, voting rights for the election of officers, and 3, the authority to serve as an officer of the Board of Trustees. What motivation does an appointed board member have to engage with or address the real concerns of parents? This bill distances parents as critical stakeholders in what happens in this district. If this bill passes, they will not have a meaningful voice in the partnership they should have with their elected trustees to advocate for students. We encourage this body to reject AB 175. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Next person in Las Vegas in opposition to Assembly Bill 175.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matthew Tramp. I'm a member of the Clark County School District Attendance Zone Advisory Commission. I'm the current chair. I don't speak for the rest of the committee, but as an individual. One of my problems is that the city and the county want input now for the Clark County School District. They are part of the root of some of the problems we deal with regarding my committee. They want to interfere in the school board, but they approve housing when they know there are no schools being available, and they stick it to the school district to flip the bill. If they're so concerned, why don't they start copying up? Also, too, why can't this role be reversed? Why can't Clark County School District have a representative on the Planning Commission to give their input, the effectiveness that these housings have on the neighborhood schools? One of my other concerns is that when the cities and the county would be able to appoint somebody, what would stop them from somebody who's a big donor to their campaigns from being appointed? Pretty much someone could buy their way into this seat, or if their donors would want their own particular person to influence. You're so concerned about diversity, we should have increased more elected trustees when you had the chance during redistricting. You're currently doing that right now with one of the cities for the same purpose. And I'm also going to remind you, I've lived here for 21 years. I can go through a list of all former elected officials who've been in jail, who've had to resign because of corruption, misuse of campaign funds, sexual harassment. Not one of them was a school board trustee. And last year, it was not 2 school board trustees that got into a physical fight on the government building. It was the city of Las Vegas, and you want to give them the power to have influence on the school district. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I don't think we have anybody else in Las Vegas, and we'll remain with opposition here in Carson City. Please, whoever wishes to go first.
Good afternoon. I am Nicole Bengochia, current Nevada Association of School Boards president and a trustee in Humboldt County. Today I am sharing my opposition for AB 175. AB 175 erodes the democratic process. Voters elect school board members who they believe will make the best decisions on behalf of all students. This bill will dilute the voice of the people, placing a non-voting member, will remove the accountability, and it will not fix the dysfunction, most likely cause more dysfunction. This model is not grounded in any research or proven success. 2 examples of this process failing include Prince George County, Maryland, and the Virgin Valley Water District in Nevada. In Prince George County, the hybrid model has been fraught with power struggles that resulted in lengthy legal challenges. There are current recommendations to remove the appointed board members from that board. By comparison, in Nevada, in 2015, legislation removed appointments to the Virgin Valley Water District Board to regain functionality. School boards across the state work as nonpartisan officials. Due to the appointment process outlined in AB 175, partisan commission members will gain influence on otherwise a nonpartisan body. As school trustees, we are subjected to training hours on board governance. I personally can attest that the single district affected by this bill has worked diligently on board governance and training, as have the rest of the trustees across the state of Nevada. School board members need is the ability to address the violations of good governance and board conduct, which we do not currently have. There are no repercussions. I urge you all to vote no on AB 175, and thank you for your time.
And thank you. Next speaker in opposition, please.
Thank you. Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. I'm here to share our strong opposition to Assembly Bill 175, which seeks to experiment on the school-age children in Southern Nevada by imposing a non-evidence-based board structure that puts adult issues and power struggles ahead of the needs of kids. As we review this legislation, I implore you to ask, does the legislature not trust voters? Does the first female majority legislature in the country not trust an all-female governing board comprised of a majority of women of color? If this legislation moves forward, as we've heard, the basic democratic principle of one person, one vote will be eroded. Surely the voice of Clark County's rural communities will be eclipsed. There are no limitations, guardrails, or standards for these appointments. Appointed members would have no term limits, and though touted as a way to bring expertise to the board, no language exists in the bill articulating who should qualify and what experience is needed. Senate Bill 65, which we had brought forward, vetted and supported by school board members across the state, did look to double the amount of training required by elected officials. This body did not move that forward. Compare AB 175 with AB 118, which seeks to reduce the size of the Board of Regents and the length of their terms. Is this legislature sending the message that they want more public accountability and participation or less? These bills together send conflicting messages about where this body stands on voter voices and participating in determining their representatives. And in closing, determining one's representatives is the foundation of our democratic society and a form of representative government. Yet AB 175 sends a loud and clear message that this legislature, comprised of elected members, believes that the voters of Southern Nevada should not select their school board representatives. Improving student outcomes is an urgent need. There is no time to waste.
I think
Thank
we
you.
just hit the 2-minute mark, and I think we do have a question for you. Senator Neal, please.
Thank you. So I don't disagree with, I would say 50% of what you said. I think that the comment about does the female majority legislature not trust a minority-led school board probably was a little bit below the belt. Absolutely it was, because it has nothing to do with that racial composition of that current board, although they're missing some diversity there. I think women to women, it's because we see an issue with children and how children are not the focus of this particular board, although some newly elected members. I had to say something about that because I felt like you were saying that we're judging because we do judge, but we're not judging them based on the fact that they're a diverse, well, it's a Latino group with one white woman, and that's not the case. And so to put that statement out, and I don't know who wrote it, but that was probably the worst statement that could be made by challenging us and saying that somehow this female-led legislature is throwing dirt on them. We're throwing dirt on that body for their actions, not for their composition, their racial composition, or the fact that they're women. It's because that children are not performing, period. Just the same way as you guys oppose this bill, which we understand why, because of the power structure that's in here. But at the same time, the district is just as guilty for not pushing policy that we feel in this building has helped to save children, right? So be honest about that, right? Be honest about the position that this may not be the best vehicle to fix the problem, It may need a 2-year sunset. It may need some subcommittee. It may need some criteria. But at the same time, you guys have come to this table and also opposed summer school. But that's the inherent problem and issue that we're dealing with, right? Is taking accountability for what you don't do, what there seems to be a refusal to do, which is teach children, and then take accountability for the failure of students not walking across their 3rd grade graduation because they can't read. And so, you know, you might, I just feel like you need to adjust that, because if that one was a tweet, man, there's serious problems with that statement.
We have an additional question from Senator Doñate.
Thank you so much. Really quick question. So we heard earlier in the testimony that perhaps there was an illusion that CCSD sent communication to its employees asking them to voice their opposition to this bill. Can you confirm, was that an action that was taken from CCSD? And is that something that was delivered to faculty, or is there some truth to that?
Thank you, Patricia Haddad. So a communication was sent out to a broad legislative update list. That list is opt-in. It includes community members, many legislators, and then if employees opt in with their employee email, then they would receive that as well.
And just to support my colleague, Senator Neal, and not to engage in the back and forth, but I mean, even there was a bill that was brought forth by you all, specifically trying to demand additional training for the board. And I make that point only to make clear that I think all of us are in agreement. We want to do more. And so just to defend my colleagues, that it felt a little personal, even though we all agree collectively, even with the very bill that you brought forth, that you're hoping that they're better trained, that they have better resources, that we have the right folk there. And I think that we all agree with that. So I just wanted to level the room with that, and I appreciate you coming forward. So with that, we'll go to the next speaker in opposition to Assembly Bill 175.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przenski, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents, and the organization is composed of all 17 superintendents. Our biggest concern with the bill has already been mentioned by Senators Titus and Neal, and that's Section 1.5, Number 8, that the appointed members can hold office and that they get to vote for the election of the officers. We feel that that is stifling to our parents and the voters. We're here in America and we vote for our leaders, and we'd like to see that continue. So that's why we're opposed to the bill. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Please.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSCA opposes AB 175 as it will do little to address the underlying issues at the Clark County School District. The most pressing issues facing Nevada schools, and particularly in Clark County, include the severe educator shortage, chronic underfunding, violence. We know there's been an incident today, and continuing inequities that are very clearly not the result of school district governance models. Instead, they're a result of a larger societal problems, along with continuing bipartisan failure of this state to truly prioritize public education. School board members are responsible for school district governance, yet they are denied resources necessary to be successful. I think you're well familiar with us coming in and saying Nevada's ranked 48th in the nation in per pupil funding. That's certainly not the fault of individual school board members. For them, it's more of a setup. Most importantly, we should be open and honest about the politics driving the latest discussion of school district governance. While there have been numerous efforts over the years to raise this issue, it never got far until our colleague Lisa Guzman was elected to the Clark County School Board. Even though Lisa Guzman is a really good school board member, her work for NSCA was such a threat to one particular entity, they filed a complaint against her even before she took the oath of office. Last session, former Speaker Frierson mentioned he only introduced this hybrid school board bill on behalf of this same organization, and that's where AB 175 comes from. It's not about professionalism or student achievement. It's about triangulation and political power. Take, for example, the contract of Superintendent Jara, the same organization who helped rally support to save the superintendent after 4 trustees voted not to renew his contract in the fall of 2021, are now running a public campaign of no confidence. But let's be honest, 75% of Clark teachers surveyed now saying they don't have confidence in the superintendent would have given the exact same response 18 months ago. Likewise, if AB 175 doesn't satisfy this group's political needs, they'll be right back here in 2 years asking to grant voting rights to the newly appointed members. More political games. NSCA, on the other hand, has consistently advocated for the inclusion of educator voice in the decisions that impact them. That's why we've advocated for school board reforms like allowing active educators to participate on their school boards. We believe incorporating educator voice onto these boards would go a long way to increase the professionalism, productivity, and standing of our school boards, actually improving student outcomes, and it would signal a genuine appreciation for Nevada teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will continue with those wishing to speak in opposition to Assembly Bill 175. Seeing none, we will go to the phone. BPS, anybody wishing to join us over the phone, opposition to Assembly Bill 175?
To testify in opposition of AB 175, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. This is Anna Binder. I really appreciate the intensity of this conversation today. And as I'm sitting here, I mean, most of you guys know I always do say I am just a mom. I will echo what Mr. Daly just said about consistency. And when you listen to those that were in support today, and the very words that you guys pointed out, like workforce and technology and all those beautiful words, none of those words really equal student outcomes, because those are adult problems, and those are people coming to the table because they want to tap in of our multi-billion-dollar budget. As many know, I've spoken out over the years about the way that they use funds, spend funds. Thankfully, tons of constituents and other community leaders listen, but no bill that's been proposed this session can give us back the board governance that we had before the pandemic. And without having a vote, we can never undo those. And as long as we do have the 4-3 split, we're never going to come out of this. And when I hear the words infighting and decorum, I don't see a thing wrong with our elected officials pushing back against things that are hurting our children. And yeah, some of it stepped out of line a few times, but demonizing any elected official for wanting the accountability, especially from the superintendent, we're never going to get it, because the 4-3 board gave almost all of their stuff up to the superintendent. So how do we get that back? How can we legislate that? Because until we can't get rid of JARA, and we can't get our vote back. Thank you.
And thank you. We're right at the 2-minute mark, but if you have additional remarks, if you could submit those to our committee staff, please. We'll go to the next caller in opposition to Assembly Bill 175.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. My name is Lynn Chapman, and I'm the State Treasurer of the Independent American Party. Our school boards are very important to us citizens. It is the government that's closest to the people. The school board controls the school's policies and budgets. They oversee the academic, legal, and financial health of school districts. They hire and evaluate the district superintendent, resolve conflicts, and allocate funds. They represent the public interest and serve the diverse values and needs of their community. The people need to see high academic standards, transparency, and accountability from our school board. Making the decisions for our community is important to us, and using our right as citizens to be able to vote for people to work in our favor is of utmost importance to us. I believe we already have attorneys that are present for legal advice. If any other expertise and professional experiences are needed, why don't you have the professionals sit in the audience with the parents? After all, the parents are the experts of the children. Do we have non-voting members on committees in the state legislature? No. You call them up when you need to hear some expert opinion, but they are not part of the committees or legislature. Maybe we should consider that. We believe appointees are not needed. We're also concerned that this idea may end up in all the other counties, and this is not something that we want. Please vote no on AB 175. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in opposition to Assembly Bill 175.
Erica Negri for the record, N-U-N-G-A-R-A-Y. We the people, for the people, elect our school trustees, just as we elected you to govern this body. If AB 175 were to pass, you undermine the people's vote. If you allow AB to pass, what are the possibilities your elected positions are not also in jeopardy of having such a bill for your elected positions? This bill could also lead into nepotism, and would that really be in the best interest of the students? Why are we not addressing the elephant in the room? We lack funding in education. Our solution is to add more trustee seats. Doesn't matter who you appoint. If the funding is not there, we will continue to be last. Vote this bill down. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in opposition to Assembly Bill 175.
This is Bruce Parks for the record. I would like to say that there's more to Nevada than just Clark County. This is an unnecessary expansion of our school boards. You cannot appoint enough expertise to the school boards to fix the problems that we currently have. This changes the quorum requirements. There's no provision in this bill that says that 4 appointees and 2 members cannot vote on things. Yes, they can, the way this bill is written. And that's a problem. If you want to fix education problems in Nevada, it's not a lack of funding. It's the fact that funding is not associated or linked to the academic requirements as measured against a nationally standardized test. Why don't we look at what Utah is doing right next door to us? They seem to be succeeding with a lot less spending of money, but we don't ever ask them that. Additionally, if you go to the opinion page on this bill, there's 159 total opinions. 151 are opposed. In whose mind would it be in the best interest to continue with this bill? I submit that if you link funding with academic achievement, you will fix the problem with the schools. Simple solution. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in opposition to Assembly Bill 175.
Chair, the Republican line is open and working, but there are no callers willing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'll invite forward in Carson City or Las Vegas those wishing to testify in the neutral position. Seeing nobody coming forward, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us in the neutral position?
Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify neutral at this time.
Thank you. And with that, if we could have our sponsors come back, any closing remarks you may have.
Shannon Bilbray Axelrod for the record. Well, as you can see, there's, it's a bill that brings a lot of people out, a lot of opinions. The reason that we brought this bill forward, the reason that my colleague and I reached across the aisle is because we do want the citizens of the kids of Clark County to do better. We know that they can do better. We know that there are great teachers out there. We know there are people who care about our kids. And we can't just keep doing the same thing we're doing and expecting a different result. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I'll Toby York for the record. I'm day, I think 92 is where we're at in my freshman session. This bill has been a challenge and the emotions have run high. I will tell you, I've personally been told I should die a slow, long death along with this bill. But honestly, I will tell you at this stage, I love the legislative process. I love that you can come up with an idea, push it out there, and it brings people to the table, filled with emotion, filled with ideas. I don't question anybody's motives, despite some of the personal attacks and things that have gone on. I think that people really, if they could put aside the emotion, all want the same thing. We all want to improve student achievement and student outcomes. And what I would suggest, or just remind this committee and asking for your support, is this goes back to 2013 with a bipartisan Southern Forum, where there were legislators, there were educators, and various stakeholders who came up with this concept. It's not novel. It's not something that's never been tried before. And even within our own state, we have an example at our state board where this model has worked. And so what I would suggest is that for 10 years, 2013 to 2023, this bill has been brought forward in 5 different sessions, and each time it's been pushed back with the promise that something is going to change. Things are going to get better. We will improve this. And yet here we are. Things have not improved. And so what I would ask you to consider is, let's give it a shot. We can always come back and we can fix things if it ended up not being the perfect solution. But I would suggest that after 10 years of not seeing the improvement that these stakeholders push forward as an example of what we might be able to do and kicking the can down the road, I would hope that you would consider today and urge your support for AB 175. Thank you.
And thank you both for the presentation. You haven't heard it all yet. What you'll hear next is you have a bill and I have a bill, and then that's going to start happening too. That's part of the legislative process. But thank you both, honestly. I know that you're going through a lot of very complicated conversations, and we appreciate you taking on a very difficult combo and doing it in a bipartisan way. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 175, and we'll hand over the gavel back to our chair.
Thank you, and we will now open for public comment. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give public comment? And anyone in Las Vegas, if you want to come to the, and we'll start in Las Vegas.
Yeah, my name is Al Rojas. I live in Assembly District 12. This is no way relates to any of the previous bills. There is a $3 billion that are coming in for education that is being pushed by Governor Lombardo. I'm asking the Committee on Education on both sides of the legislature that we need a law to bring more counselors into the schools. And I'm reading that not only in the charter schools, but in the public schools, we got a problem with the kids they're not respecting their teachers or being in a learning environment. And a lot of them need counseling. It could be anything from ADD, problems at home, things of that sort. And I'm hearing we need 200, for every 250 students, we need 1 counselor, and we need a law that says if you're a counselor, you cannot be put in as a teaching person. You have to be a counselor, because we need to keep these kids in school. If you don't keep these kids in school and get them the proper counseling and learn how to be receptive students and produce more law-abiding citizens, not only is education going to go down, crime is going to follow when these kids graduate from school. So I'm pleading with you guys to somehow come up with a law, put something in one of these bills, and we need counselors. That's the solution. That's going to make the most impact on charter and public schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Marks.
Good afternoon. Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association. 10 today kicks off Teacher Appreciation Week. Teachers are champions for their students while working with parents and caregivers to make sure every student is reached. While they're in our classrooms each and every day and on our school sites, I have the honor, along with my colleagues behind me, to help elevate their voices within these walls. So this Teacher Appreciation Week, we are saying more for educators, but we're also saying it's time for 20. The best way to appreciate our teachers is to respect this profession and listen to our educators. That's why NSCA has called for a 20% salary raise for all Nevada educators, a $20 minimum wage in our schools, and 20 students per class. For a year, this is what educators and NSCA have been calling for to address our historic vacancies, as well as to remain competitive with nearby states like California and New Mexico, who have passed a 20 to 30% raise for educators. Last month, NEA released their annual rankings of the states, and you've heard my colleagues say that we continue to struggle at number 48th in the nation, and with the largest class sizes in the country. This session, again, we've heard about historic funding efforts. However, the Commission on School Funding has already testified that most of the additional proposed funding will go towards increasing costs. This week, and especially for the next 29 days, yes, we're counting every day on Nellis, let's join together and tell educators that we are not only listening, but advocating for them. This means not putting $2.4 billion into reserve accounts. This means no public funding for California billionaires to build a stadium. That means it's time for 20. NSCA encourages legislators to keep moving forward with optimal funding, not just running in place, so that we can ensure a high-quality education for every Nevada student. That's how we believe we can best appreciate our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone BPS on the phones wishing to give public comment?
If you would like to give public comment, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we'll adjourn the Committee on Education, and I will see all of you, I'm sure, back here on Wednesday. Have a good afternoon.